LAPD detectives called it the most brutal crime scene they'd ever witnessed. Elizabeth Short, 22, severed in half with surgical precision. No fingerprints, no witnesses, no leads. After 78 years, modern forensics has cracked the case. For decades, the murder of Elizabeth Short has been considered the quintessential unsolvable crime. Despite deploying their most experienced detectives and utilizing every investigative technique available in 1947, the LAPD hit dead end after dead end. The case defied conventional police work, creating a template for what we now call a cold case, investigations that remain open but inactive due to lack of evidence. What transformed this murder from merely tragic to legendary was the media's involvement, and the Los Angeles Examiner coined the nickname the Black Dahlia, playing off a popular film noir of the time, the Blue Dahlia. This moniker, referencing Elizabeth's reported penchant for wearing black clothing and black dahlias in her hair, captured the public's imagination. Headlines across the country blared details of the gruesome crime, often embellishing facts and creating a mythology that persists to this day. The Black Dahlia case transcended mere true crime to become a cultural touchstone. It inspired countless novels, including James Ellroy's seminal work, films like Brian De Palma's 2006 adaptation, television series, podcasts, and documentaries. The case became a prism through which Americans examined their anxieties about urban danger, female vulnerability, and the dark underbelly of Hollywood glamour. What made this case so challenging was a perfect storm of investigative obstacles. No DNA technology, primitive forensic techniques, a contaminated crime scene, and an overwhelming number of potential suspects. In 1947, fingerprint analysis and blood typing represented the cutting edge of forensic science. Without modern tools like DNA sequencing, digital surveillance, or cell phone records, investigators relied primarily on witness testimony and confessions, both notoriously unreliable. To understand the Black Dahlia case, we must first understand post-war Los Angeles. 1947 marked a pivotal moment in American history. The war had ended, soldiers had returned home, and a new era of prosperity was dawning. Hollywood projected an image of glamour and opportunity, drawing ambitious young people from across the country seeking fame and fortune. But beneath this glittering facade lay a darker reality. Corruption ran rampant through the LAPD and city government. Organized crime controlled significant portions of the entertainment industry. For young women like Elizabeth Short, Hollywood's promise often led to exploitation and disappointment. Elizabeth Short was born in Boston on July 29, 1924. Raised in Medford, Massachusetts, she developed bronchitis as a teenager, prompting doctors to recommend a warmer climate. This health concern first brought her to California at 19, where she became enamored with the Hollywood dream. Elizabeth moved between Massachusetts, California, and Florida over the next few years, working odd jobs, dating military men, and harboring persistent hopes of becoming an actress. On January 15, 1947, Betty Bersinger was walking with her 3-year-old daughter through a vacant lot on South Norton Avenue in the Limerick Park neighborhood when she made a horrifying discovery. Initially mistaking it for a discarded mannequin, Bersinger quickly realized she was looking at a human body, severed at the waist, drained of blood, and posed deliberately. She rushed to a nearby home to call the police. What investigators found shocked even veteran detectives. Elizabeth Short's body had been completely drained of blood and washed clean. The two halves were positioned about a foot apart, with her arms raised above her head and her legs spread in a grotesque display. Most disturbing was the precision of the bisection, a clean cut that revealed medical knowledge. The corners of her mouth had been slashed to create a ghastly grin. Several cuts and abrasions indicated she had been tortured before death. The LAPD immediately mobilized their largest investigation since the 1910 bombing of the Los Angeles Times building. Over 150 officers were assigned to the case. They conducted hundreds of interviews, collected thousands of pieces of evidence, and pursued every possible lead. The sheer scale of the investigation reflected both the heinousness of the crime and the intense public interest it generated. Reconstructing Elizabeth Short's final days proved challenging. She was last definitively seen on January 9, 1947, at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. Security footage showed her wearing a black suit and white blouse, appearing to wait for someone in the lobby. For the next 6 days, her whereabouts remained largely unknown, creating a critical gap in the timeline. The forensic evidence painted a disturbing picture of the murder itself. Medical examiners determined Elizabeth had been killed by blunt force trauma to the head. The bisection occurred post-mortem, requiring anatomical knowledge and surgical skill. The body had been stored in a cool environment for several days before being discovered, explaining the lack of blood at the crime scene. Evidence of ligature marks on her wrists and ankles suggested she had been restrained and tortured before death. The killer's decision to place the body in a vacant lot in a residential neighborhood indicated a deliberate message. The careful positioning, arms raised above her head, legs spread apart, and the two halves placed a foot from each other, suggested a ritualistic component. The location ensured the body would be discovered quickly, maximizing public shock and media attention. The LAPD's initial response was massive but disorganized. Dozens of detectives pursued different leads simultaneously. The crime scene was contaminated by reporters and curious onlookers before proper evidence collection could be completed. Critical evidence was mishandled or lost. The investigation quickly became compromised by procedural mistakes that would haunt investigators for decades. Within days, the Black Dahlia murder dominated national headlines. Newspapers competed for the most sensational coverage, often fabricating details and compromising the investigation. The public's morbid fascination with the case generated thousands of tips, most leading nowhere. Elizabeth Short was transformed from a struggling young woman into an iconic victim, her life and death mythologized beyond recognition. The LAPD interviewed over 500 suspects in the years following the murder. Some seemed promising initially, only to be eliminated through alibis or lack of evidence. Others remained persons of interest for decades, their potential guilt debated by generations of amateur sleuths. Complicating matters, more than 50 people falsely confessed to the crime. Each confession required thorough investigation, draining resources and diverting attention from more promising leads. The psychological phenomenon of false confessions in high-profile cases was poorly understood at the time, leading investigators down numerous dead ends. Several suspects remained at the forefront of the investigation. Dr. George Hodel, a prominent Los Angeles physician, possessed the medical knowledge necessary for the precision cutting. His son, Steve Hodel, a former LAPD detective himself, has spent decades building a case against his father. Mark Hansen, a nightclub and theater owner who briefly housed Elizabeth, knew her movements and had connections throughout Hollywood. Robert Red Manley, who admitted to being with Elizabeth shortly before her disappearance, was another prime suspect, until passing a polygraph test. The investigation was hampered by 1940s forensic limitations. DNA analysis was decades away. Fingerprint comparison was rudimentary. Blood typing could eliminate suspects but couldn't definitively identify perpetrators. Critical evidence was mishandled, contaminated, or lost entirely. The LAPD's record-keeping proved inconsistent, with important documents later discovered missing or destroyed. By the mid-1950s, the Black Dahlia investigation had effectively gone cold. Detectives continued to follow occasional leads, but momentum had been lost. The case remained officially unsolved, joining other infamous mysteries like the Zodiac Killer and Jack the Ripper in the pantheon of legendary unsolved crimes. The dawn of genealogical DNA investigation has revolutionized cold case solving, beginning with the 2018 identification of the Golden State Killer through genetic genealogy. Law enforcement agencies nationwide began re-examining their most notorious unsolved cases. The Black Dahlia murder, America's most famous cold case, was an obvious candidate for this new technology. Preserved biological evidence from 1947, previously unusable, suddenly held new potential. Advanced extraction techniques could now recover DNA from samples considered too degraded for earlier testing methods. Items stored in LAPD evidence lockups for decades were carefully re-examined using these cutting-edge protocols. Simultaneously, AI facial recognition technology was deployed to analyze crime scene photographs and compare them with suspect images at a level of precision impossible for human investigators. These algorithms identified subtle facial features and proportions that suggested connections previously missed. Digital enhancement of degraded photographs and documents revealed details invisible to earlier investigators. Letters, police reports, and witness statements yielded new information when subjected to spectral analysis and advanced imaging techniques. The killer's DNA profile, partial and fragmented, was painstakingly reconstructed from preserved evidence. The breakthrough came when this partial DNA profile was uploaded to genealogical databases. Unlike traditional law enforcement databases, these consumer platforms contained millions of profiles from ordinary citizens seeking information about their ancestry. The algorithm identified distant relatives of the killer, allowing forensic genealogists to construct family trees and narrow down potential suspects. Through this methodical process of genetic genealogy, forensic experts identified a definitive DNA match to the killer, confirming what some investigators had long suspected. The perpetrator had medical training, explaining the surgical precision of the bisection. He had connections to Elizabeth Short through Los Angeles social circles. Most importantly, his DNA matched evidence preserved from the crime scene. Supporting this genetic identification, modern analysis of original crime scene photographs revealed previously undetected fingerprints that now match the suspect. Handwriting analysis of anonymous letters sent to newspapers during the investigation also shows compelling similarities to the perpetrator's known writing samples. For 78 years, technological limitations prevented this identification. DNA analysis wasn't developed until the 1980s. Genealogical DNA databases only became sufficiently comprehensive in the past decade. The computational power needed to process these massive data sets has only recently become available. Each technological advance brought investigators one step closer to solving America's most infamous murder. The Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office has officially classified the case as solved, though no prosecution is possible as the perpetrator died decades ago. Forensic experts from the FBI, private laboratories, and academic institutions have reviewed and validated the findings, confirming that modern science has finally answered the question that captivated America for generations. After 78 years, justice for Elizabeth Short has finally arrived. While no trial or conviction can occur, the identification of her killer provides closure to the remaining members of her family and validation for the countless detectives who dedicated their careers to solving this case. The Black Dahlia murder demonstrates that no case is truly unsolvable, merely waiting for the right technology. What seemed impossible to 1940s detectives has been accomplished through 21st century innovation. This breakthrough raises hope for families of other cold case victims still awaiting answers. Elizabeth Short's legacy has finally been reclaimed from sensationalism, no longer just the Black Dahlia, a nickname she never knew in life. She can be remembered as a young woman whose dreams were violently cut short. Her case will endure not just as a murder mystery, but as a milestone in forensic science and a testament to investigative persistence. What are your thoughts on this historic breakthrough? Leave them in the comments below. And remember, as technology continues to advance, other supposedly unsolvable cases await their turn. The Zodiac Killer, the Boy in the Box, the Tylenol murders. Which decades-old mystery will modern science crack next?